Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Physical. I am not Portia Sabin. I am Nicole Hennessy, Vice President of Music Biz. Portia is stuck in a little bit of traffic getting back to the office, so I am here with Steve Harkins from Ingram Entertainment. He's also chair of our Physical Business Action Committee. So, Steve, thank you for your work in putting this event together. I know you work very hard to get the right people to have the right conversations, and we appreciate that.
Thank you, Nicole, and to you for all the hard work you put into this. Great to be here, and thanks for stepping in for Portia. You're doing a fantastic job. I just want to thank everybody. We know your time's a premium for this installment. This is the first one for Let's Talk Physical in 2022. And also, Nicole, thanks to the Music Business Association for providing today's platform and for your partnership with the Physical Business Action Committee. We really appreciate that.
I'm excited between the two panels. I'll talk a little bit more about the programming that we're going to be doing at Music Biz 2022, because I think that is just a continuation of this, and we'll finally be back face to face. We won't be here on Zoom, so that's exciting.
Excellent. So let me just share with everyone, the Physical Business Action Committee was formed with the intent to heighten awareness to the music industry at large of the successes and challenges with physical music, the important function retailers delivering music to fans provides, and that physical music is the owner proposition to fans. Thanks to the committee members who provide great vision and dedicate their time to our initiatives, and those committee members are Ken Glazer from Alliance, Sue Vega from Ingram, Carrie Collin from Record Store Day and Department of Record Stores, Andrea Pichel from Coalition of Independent Music Stores, Carl Mello from Newberry Comics, Marquetta Rodriguez from Sirius Sounds, Justin Johnson, Dark Side Records, Terry Courier of Music Millennium, John Kuntz of Waterloo Records, and of course, Portia and Nicole Hennessy of Music Business. And on occasion, we'll let Michael Kurtz chime in, also Record Store Day and Department of Record Stores. I kid Michael, he knows that. So as Nicole mentioned, in May, we've got some great programming during Music Biz coming up next month, or I should say May. We're almost in April. She'll touch on that. But today we're going to get an update from representatives of our task force on the initiative to identify recommended best practices. And this is an attempt to reduce vinyl damages. I'm also here from representatives at the pressing plants to discuss the latter part of 2021 and prognosis for this year in 2023. But first, let's welcome from Luminate, formerly MRC, and by the way, I'm waiting for my Luminate t-shirt, product business analyst Peter Kreen, who will share new physical product sales numbers. Peter, good to see you. Thanks for being here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me. Let me get my screen share. All right. Can everybody see?
We can.
Okay, fantastic. So as Steve mentioned, my name is Pete Kreen. I'm a business analyst with Luminate, formerly MRC Data. I'm really excited to talk to all of you today around some of the exciting trends we've been seeing within the physical sales space over the last year or so. My goal is to sort of shed some light on what's been driving these recent trends and ultimately what they mean in sort of the larger context of where physical sales have been trending over the longer term as well. There's certainly going to be a focus on vinyl, as that's where some of the more exciting trends have been. We'll be taking a deeper look from quite a number of different angles. So format type, store type, genre level, release age, current versus catalog, and then all the way down to artist and title level as well. So this is just a really high level overview around how the album sales market has been trending each year over the last 2 decades. This slide is inclusive of both physical and digital formats, so CD albums versus vinyl versus digital. We can see that 2021 here marked the first year that total album sales, physical and digital combined, experienced a year of growth in about 10 years, going all the way back to 2011. The growth that took place this past year, as we can see, was far more significant than the growth that took place back then. So about a 6.2% growth rate this year versus a 1% growth rate back in 2011. Additionally, the actual drivers behind this recent growth were entirely different. 2011 experienced its increase due to digital growth outpacing physical declines, whereas in 2021, we saw an increase due to physical growth outpacing digital declines. So both growth scenarios, but with sort of different and opposite drivers behind each. Over the next couple slides, I'm going to focus on just the physical album format specifically. Again, just to better understand how each of those have been trending and what's ultimately been driving those trends. So here we are breaking out just CD albums and how they've been trending over the last 2 decades. Similar to the previous slide, CD albums in 2021 experienced its first year of growth in some time, since 2004, so over 15 years ago. So even though the CD albums market is quite a bit smaller than it was back then, it's really exciting and really positive to see this year of growth. So here we are breaking out just vinyl album yearly trends over the last 2 decades as well. Unlike digital albums, unlike CD albums, vinyl has been experiencing really healthy and really impressive year-over-year growth since 2006, and that marks 17 years of consecutive growth. In 2021, Luminate was able to report 41.7 million vinyl sales, compared to just 1.2 million in 2001. And that means that the vinyl sales market is now over 33 times the size it was about 20 years ago, which is obviously really impressive and really, really exponential growth. So beyond that, beyond the actual increasing volumes, the actual rate at which volume has been growing, the rate at which vinyl has been growing over the last couple of years has also been increasing. So in 2019, for example, vinyl increased 12% over the prior year. Fast forward to 2021, and vinyl increased by 52% over the prior year. So again, the growth over these last couple of years has not only been really steady, really consistent, but exponential as well. And it's with that exponential growth that vinyl albums can now claim itself as the largest leading album sales format. It not only outpaced CD albums this year, but digital as well by a significant margin. And that's what the pie chart to the right here is outlining. So now that we've sort of at a more higher level have an understanding around how each of the physical album formats have been trending over the longer term, these next handful of slides are going to focus on some of the more recent trends over the last couple of months and the last couple of years. This slide is measuring vinyl sales by store type by quarter. So indie stores versus internet mail order versus mass merchant versus chain versus non-traditional retail. We can see that vinyl sales have not only been steadily growing as we just laid out, but we can also see that they were able to recover quite quickly from shutdown measures due to the pandemic. Q2 of 2020, which was sort of the very beginning of these shutdown measures, vinyl sales from the brick and mortar stratus, so independent, mass merchant, chain, non-traditional retailer, all declined pretty dramatically as consumers were more or less forced to shift towards online.com purchasing. But by the end of 2021, we can already see that indie sales and sales from the other brick and mortar strata have recovered quite well. I do think one of the more compelling insights to call out here is just the increase of mass merchants presence over the last couple of years, increasing its share of the vinyl market more than threefold since 2019. I think this increase can be attributed to retailers like Target, retailers like Walmart being more aggressive in stocking and marketing vinyl product, especially with their own exclusive variants. So just a really clear indication of these real retailers understanding that there's real money to be made with vinyl. So if we take a look at this year's vinyl growth from a genre perspective, we can pull out some really interesting insights. Firstly, it appears that the pop and country genres made the biggest gains in terms of their shares of the vinyl universe, which is what the bar chart on the right here is referring to. So pop increased its share by nearly 2.5 percentage points, while country increased its share by just over 1%. R&B, hip hop, world music, which is comprised of mostly K-pop acts like BTS, and Latin all increased their shares as well, albeit by less significant margins. So due to these sort of various genre increases, rock saw its share get eaten into quite a bit, with its share declining just over 4%. And just to be really clear on that, this does not mean that rock vinyl sales declined in 2021. They actually grew a really impressive 41%. This is just saying that these other genres, especially pop and country, grew at even more impressive and more significant rates. That being said, these trends do not change the fact that rock still sort of controls the vinyl sales market with a majority share of about 52%, which is what the pie chart to the left here is referring to. So rock, as I'm sure we all know, really overperforms when it comes to vinyl, with about 12% of the genre's total consumption coming from vinyl in 2021. And on sort of the opposite side of that, just for context, Latin is the genre that underperforms the most when it comes to vinyl, with less than 0.5% of its total consumption coming from vinyl last year. So to better understand why it is the pop and country genre specifically experienced the biggest vinyl growth, we can take a look at some of the top selling vinyl albums from last year. Leading the way is Adele's 30, unsurprisingly, followed by Olivia Rodrigo's Sour, Taylor Swift's re-release of Red, Harry Styles' Fine Line, and then Billie Eilish's Happier Than Ever to round out the top 5. So between 30, Sour, Fine Line, Happier Than Ever, and then Taylor's Evermore and Folklore albums, 6 of the top 10 selling vinyl albums last year were pop. So that obviously explains the genre's really, really impressive growth in that area. These 6 albums combined for over 1.5 million vinyl sales, which means they were responsible for about 1 of every 3 vinyl albums purchased within the pop genre last year. Now for country, the other big genre winner, and although not all the titles are displayed on this slide, it was Taylor's Red and Fearless re-releases that led the way, along with Chris Stapleton's Traveler and Casey Musgrave's Star-Crossed and Golden Hour that were the highest selling within the country genre. I think another interesting insight to pull out here is that 4 of the top 5 vinyl albums were actually released in 2021, which indicates that, despite its strong presence within the market, it's not just the older sort of catalog rock albums that make up the year's most popular albums. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, as it's really just an extension of the previous slide. But here we are outlining which artists experienced the most impressive vinyl growth in 2021. Due to the Taylor vinyl successes that we just laid out in the previous slide, across her various recent album releases, she was able to experience far and away the most impressive growth relative to any other artist across the industry last year. As we can see, she increased her vinyl sales by about 867,000 units. And with that growth, about 15% of her total consumption came from vinyl last year. And this is really impressive, considering she was also the second highest streamed artist across the entire industry in 2021. So behind Taylor, we had Adele, and then Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish, also driven by their respective new 2021 album releases. All that being said, 4 of the biggest vinyl winners this past year were women, which is great to see. So I think this is one of the more exciting vinyl trends from the past year. Here we are breaking out 2021 growth rates by release age across each of the consumption formats within both the sales and streaming universes. So by release age, I mean current activity versus catalog activity. Current refers to the consumption of titles that are younger than 18 months, while catalog refers to the consumption of titles that are older than 18 months. So as we can see all the way on the right-hand side here, current growth greatly outpaced catalog growth for vinyl, which is really interesting because it's sort of the opposite of what we're seeing across the other sales and streaming formats here, with current growth more or less underperforming significantly against catalog. So all that to say, I think this is just another reflection of sort of the high impacting new album releases that took place this past year from Taylor, Adele, Olivia, and Billie that we just walked through. But I think this can also be taken as another indication that the industry's biggest artists and the industry at large is just noticing the increasing popularity and appeal of vinyl. So this slide is taking a look at weekly vinyl and weekly CD sales totals for 2021. I thought that breaking out the year on a weekly cadence would allow us to understand when any vinyl spikes took place throughout the year. So the first and most obvious spikes were unsurprisingly during each of the Record Store Day events. The first RSD event, which took place in June, resulted in an 85% increase in weekly vinyl sales. And it was able to reach about 1.3 million sales. And during the second RSD event in July, vinyl sales similarly increased about 75% to reach over 1.1 million weekly vinyl sales. So both RSD events, as usual, were catalysts for really, really impressive weekly vinyl growth. And when we're not considering weeks within the holiday season, this ultimately led to the first two weekly vinyl sales totals surpassing 1 million sales ever, which is really exciting. And lastly, as we see every year, both vinyl sales and CD sales tend to steadily increase over the course of the holiday season, beginning in November. I think it's also important to note that CD and vinyl weekly sales volumes really closely resemble one another throughout the year, with CD sales actually generally slightly outpacing weekly vinyl besides for those RSD weeks. So here we are focusing on just Record Store Day week specifically, breaking out weekly vinyl sales total from each event over the last 10 years or so. Just to be clear, we do not have the ability to break out just RSD sales specifically. So these weekly totals are inclusive of both RSD and non-RSD vinyl sales, but even so, that being said, the majority of these totals are going to be coming from RSD specific sales. So with that, we can see sort of a similar story to the larger vinyl sales growth we've been witnessing over the last 17 years. We're seeing the same with each year's RSD event. Despite the pandemic, despite shutdown measures, RSD events over the last 2 years have still managed to be usually successful. There were 3 RSD events in 2020 and 2 events in 2021, each of which totaling to over 2 million vinyl sales within each year. And that total is more than twice the size of any previous year. So it appears that holding these multiple events has been really successful. It'll certainly be interesting to see the numbers from this year coming up in April. So before sort of closing this out, I wanted to take a look ahead to try to understand how vinyl and CD albums are performing this year and will potentially perform for the remainder of 2022. We're obviously only a couple months into the year at this point and don't have this year's Record Store Day to look at just yet. But even still, we can already see that unlike what we saw in 2021, weekly vinyl sales are now consistently outperforming CD sales week over week. And because of that, vinyl has already increased its share of the physical space by a couple percentage points from 38% in 2021 up to 41% up to this point in 2022. And that's what this pie chart in the upper right is referring to here. I expect this trend to continue throughout the year, especially considering there haven't been any major vinyl releases yet. And as I just mentioned, we haven't hit record store day yet either. So all in all, I feel like this is a really, really exciting time for vinyl and a time to be really, really optimistic about its future. So with that, thank you all very much for the time. I know we just talked through a ton of data in a fairly short amount of time, so please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions or any thoughts or anything around what was shared today. Thanks, everyone.
Peter, thanks so much. That was, excuse the pun, an illuminating presentation. I wasn't paid to say that, folks, but I felt compelled. It was terrific. Detail was fantastic. A few takeaways. I noted. I'm sure everybody took copious notes, but I hope retailers are paying attention to the CD trends that Peter touched on, particularly with the supply demand issues of vinyl. You know, almost every release it comes out on CD, and we know that day and date is a challenge on vinyl. And if you're not in that space, you really need to consider entering it in some way, shape, form, or fashion. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and your numbers won't tell that story, but this is really the artist management, artists and labels, is that the R&B and hip hop numbers from the vinyl standpoint would be significantly higher if there were physical releases on some of the premier artists that we don't see presently. There's a real gap there. And so a real call to action. I think, you know, the numbers reinforce it. So please consider, you know, your major R&B and hip hop artists in the mix when it comes to physical vinyl releases. So at any rate, the other thing I think as well was also on the contemporary side. It's really exciting to see younger contemporary artists in the mix as far as top sellers in addition to the classic albums. That's another good sign for all of us. So Peter, if we had an ambassador for Let's Talk Physical, I would nominate you. Probably should have closed with all that great news, but we have some other great programming. So thanks to Luminate and you for that presentation.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the time.
You bet. So, folks, the PBAC, the Physical Business Action Committee, deliberated over what actions we could take with the great challenges of vinyl supply meeting consumer demand, and we identified an ongoing concern with vinyl, the covers and shrink wrap, and that's the damages through handling, shipping, and storage. We all know vinyl albums are a precious commodity. We often cannot replace those due to damages, and it was determined that there was really no formal or informal guidelines amongst most companies in the music industry supply chain. So we formed a task force, and the mission was to create recommendations of best practices to share with all the partners in that supply chain. Understanding part of this may involve associated costs, increases, investments to improve those processes. And the intent is to share ideas, provide some guidance, and wanted to state that the final product is not a mandate industry-wide, but again, guidance and recommendations. Also, the task force mentioned, the panel today wanted me to mention that we want to be clear, this is a living and breathing document that we're going to be producing, and we certainly intend to add and alter findings going forward. So we would encourage you, the chat function, if you have some thoughts or ideas, please plug those in. We're recording this, and we will certainly scrutinize that, or reach out to any one of us after this event for consideration to include your thoughts. We hope to share the formal iteration of this, the findings in May at Music Biz. You'll hear more about that from Nicole, but we thought we'd update you today. But first, I want to very excited that we have some visual aids to frame the continuing challenges. And these aids are provided by none other than Justin Johnson of Darkside Records, who recently received an Academy Award nomination for Best Short Video by a Music Retailer. Congratulations, Justin.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Over to you, my friend.
Okay, so yeah, we're gonna go ahead and share my screen here just to give you some visuals of what it is that we as retailers have been seeing. And I quickly tried to gather some photos from other stores as well, so it's not only my boxes that I'm showing here. So if you can see at this first slide here, This is the famed pizza box provided to us by our friends from Park Ave in Orlando, Florida. These are the sorts of damages that we're seeing every single day when the boxes arrive, and it's across the board. It's not any one particular company or one particular distributor. Moving on to my next one here. This is an example of how some product arrived to us. As you can see, the boxes themselves have just not been holding together at all. I personally find myself often scraping records off the bottom of the UPS truck as I go out there to help my driver load all these packages in. Here's another example of what can happen when these boxes aren't strong enough and aren't making it to us safely so that we can actually put them in the hands of the fans that want to give us their hard-earned money for them. Moving on, here's a little bit more. These are my personal examples from here on Darkside. Here's another one. This is a box that, just through transit has been thrown around. And this is an example of just the corner is not holding out because the weight of the cardboard is not surviving the transit to us. That's my box. This one here comes to us from down in the valley in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I've got a bunch that Stephen was kind enough to send over to me. Stephen actually told me, I thought quite funny, that he has more pictures of damaged boxes on his phone than he has of his wife. There's one. You can see same sort of example as what we're getting here. It's between the tape and the box itself, they're just not adequate to survive the transit from distribution to stores. This is another one from down in the valley. Keep it going. They fall apart, and not only does it lead to damages, but then it leads to missing product because who knows where the records have fallen out along the line on some conveyor belt or in some truck, some parking lot. Here we go is another one. Examples of corners splitting apart. This one here is one of my examples. Often when full box slots are shipped to us, you order a quantity 30 of something, they're not being shipped in an outer box, they're being shipped in their inner cartons. And those boxes definitely do not survive the journey to us. And here's my last example of yet another blown out corner.
Thank you, Justin. And I guess we're going to have to send some recommendations for counseling to Stephen, based on his photos. We love Stephen. Definitely eye-opening. No surprise to those of us that are in the middle of this, but we thought we would share this. And I just wanted to also mention that the task force includes some experts from 3 major music companies, several independents, plants, wholesalers, labels, distribution, and retailers. It's really exciting that everybody got together to acknowledge this area. It's a problem area as we seek to try to find creative ways to improve what the end result of what you just saw from Justin. So I'd like to introduce the panel right now representing the task force. There are others behind the task force. Kerry Cullen, Department of Record Stores, Record Store Day. Tom Donner, the Vice President of Global Supply Management, the Universal Music Group. Billy Fields, the Vice President of Sales Account Management, WMX. Warwick Goldby, who's the VP of Distribution Operations for Alliance. And lastly, of course, Justin Johnson, co-owner of Darkside Records. Thanks so much, folks, for being here. And let's start with the cartons and how they're packed and sealed. There's different elements that we're looking at. There's factory sealed cartons that come from the plants. There's bulk cartons with mixed selections shipped to retailers and wholesalers, and what we call the pizza box, which is used for direct-to-consumer fulfillment, and also smaller shipments to retailers. So Tom, I'll pick on you first. Let's kind of talk about kind of the assessment as far as the actual weight or gauge of the corrugate used, and inside the configurations and packing, not to mention how cartons are sealed, that could all potentially lead to improved shipments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've done our best to be diligent about identifying the varying points within transportation that damage can occur. And we've also looked at each of those areas individually to see where we could have a positive impact with material weight, structure design, taping efficiency, and pack out. Honestly, sometimes we have issues with excess headspace, not proper dunnage. So there's a lot that goes into what we've been looking at. And I think that the most important thing that we've identified in the short term is that many of the cartons that are in use are 32 ECT, and they are not sufficient to handle parcel transportation. And we have to remember, no matter how well they come in from a supplier, many of these units are going to end up in parcel transport, whether to indies or end consumers. So we've been looking at that pretty aggressively to try to find a way to ensure that these items, which are difficult to get in the first place, make it to where they need to be in a saleable condition or improve the consumer experience.
Appreciate that. Billy, anything you'd like to add?
At this time,
Your
I guess the
lawyers
big thing
advise
is
you not
that,
to speak, right?
right. Remove the emotion. That's what you said earlier, right? Like, this is not emotional. This is like this matter
You
of
can
fact.
do it. You can do it.
I just noticed a comment from Matt about headspace, excess headspace. There is some terminology I think that would be good. Tom, you're great at this. You know what this stuff means to better explain the terms we're using. But I think that the ECT rating is really sort of one of the things that I pivoted off of. I focused on from our first calls was that 32 ECT just does not seem to be strong enough to, regardless of how the box is actually constructed, but that ECT rating is not high enough. So I think that one of the things we talked about as far as a recommendation is concerned is, hey, let's look at 44 or even a 48 ECT, which obviously makes a much better carton. Still needs to be taped correctly, still needs to be packed correctly. That excess headspace is the space between the last record and the top of the box. You got to put something in there. Without having something in there, you're going to see crushing, you're going to see records moving around. So beyond that ECT rating, it's also about, hey, are we doing the rest that we need to be doing? Making sure we're not putting 1 or 2 records in a 10 count box so they can just run around like they're having a party and they show up and they're all damaged and you can't sell them. That's the sort of thing that we've been focused on and try to pay attention to see what the cost of that increase is to better ECT ratings and better taping and better process through packing so that we can sort of save that. Earlier, we had talked about sort of that margin recovery that we're all engaged in, whether it's at the store dealing with burned man-hour times around filing claims, or it's increased cost of corrugate so that, we're recovering the damage part of it, so we offset it. So it's, I think all that is all pretty much in scope. We've figured it out pretty well. And now it comes down to, I guess, formalizing in writing and then get them out to all of us to say, hey, let's line up around these recommendations and see what we can all do.
Yeah, great input, Billy. Warwick, you guys do a terrific job. You've been a proponent of evaluating. I think Billy touched on this. How many units of vinyl to place in a carton to help improve the end result?
Absolutely. So, as much as I wish that we were perfect in our shipping, I know that we're not. But we've taken it a couple of steps to try and determine what that strength of the cardboard is, what your inners are. And one of the things that we discovered, we thought that we were saving some money by doing 20 count inserts, but that's 20 pounds of product. So we made the executive decision to cut that down to a maximum of 10 pieces per insert. And honestly, our claims have reduced significantly since we've done that. But also when you look at it from a parcel carrier, when you're picking up 40 pieces of vinyl, that's a 40-pound box. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be dropped, dented. But by bringing it down to the 10 pieces per insert, brings it down to 10 pounds, and the additional insert then adds the strength to that. Even with that, we do still see damages, not as many as we have seen before, but the weight is really significant, especially for parcel carriers as well.
it's a great call out. And some of you may be saying, hey, aren't we all sharing, proprietary or, internal secrets? But the beauty of this task force is we all agree, regardless of where vinyl comes from, whether it's direct or from one wholesaler or another, every unit that's preserved and sold helps reinforce this industry, and it's for the greater good. So, whether you're getting product from Alliance or from Ingram or direct from the majors or from the independents or whatever, it's important it all shows up in pristine condition. So it's a great experience for the fans as we're struggling through the supply chain issues. Carrie, I was just going to point to you. You graciously volunteered to help kind of spearhead the documents. I use your term, living, breathing document. Could you kind of share with everybody what that may look like when we hopefully deliver it live in Nashville in May?
Yeah, you say hopeful. I think Billy and I are already past some internal deadlines on that, so sorry.
You'll make it.
I do just want to point out, it's fascinating to look at these comments because they kind of, show the scope of what the task force is trying to cover. The task force has people from all walks of this, and we are looking at this from everywhere. Like, is it being shipped from the plant to distribution? Is it being shipped from distribution to retail? Is it being shipped directly to customers? All of that is all different. An internal box that goes to distribution and then gets used to ship to retail, that's a no-no, but a bad thing going to a customer is totally different. And so we are trying to look at all of these scenarios. We're also trying to kind of come at every aspect of this. Like, yeah, we're looking at materials, 44 ECT is recommended, and for this situation, we're recommending y'all buy better tape. Because one of Justin's pictures, I think they used an entire roll of tape on that box and it still got damaged. So that speaks to it's the tape. So all of that we're going to try and address. And we also have to realize we're talking to various layers of people when this happens. We're talking to, the people who make the decisions on whether the money is spent on better boxes, down to the people who actually pick up those records, put them in the boxes, and tape them up. And some of those people that are doing that don't have any idea where this is going or what it's like to be a retailer on the other end. They have no idea. So the document that Steve's talking about is probably going to be 6 different kinds of documents. It'll be a piece of paper or a PDF that gets sent around at distribution offices or high level, much higher than me, people making these decisions. But it'll also maybe be something that looks like an IKEA, instruction manual that hopefully gets laminated and put on the floor at distribution companies and warehouse fulfillment companies so that they can see, like, this is why you're doing it this way, right? Vinyl is special. This is a conversation that gets happened every time we have somebody on a pressing plant. The next panel is going to talk about how special and precious vinyl is, and it really is. We need to be teaching the people who are packing it up and shipping it out to wherever it's going that's the case too. So that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of finished product, which really isn't finished because, we did talk earlier today about this is going to change. We're going to not think of something, somebody's going to bring it up and we're going to say, oh my God, what a great idea. Let's insert that. And hey, here's updated standards and best practices and recommendations, which is all this is. We're all very different companies in this industry. We all have to work together. It's a small world, this industry. So hearing from all these people saying, this is what we would like to see happen. And we've taken into account that what we're telling you is the best practice is going to cost you more money, but here's why that makes sense and is going to pay for itself in the first, couple of months of not damaged shipments.
That's right.
Really looking at it from a really big picture.
And Steve, if you don't mind, I just want to add one thing.
Yeah, please.
It's awesome in the chat that you can see people calling out where they're seeing good results. And I think that sharing those good results, not just in this forum, but also with all of your contacts in the business is also really important. When you're getting something that, oh, someone's actually done it right, definitely positive reinforcement is huge. We're all so thin-skinned and just weak that we need to be told we're doing a good job. So, please, when we're doing a bad job, let us know that too. I'm not saying don't tell us when we're screwing it up, Justin. But definitely on the good side too. Please make sure that you're sharing the good stories as well.
Yeah, good call up, Billy, and Carrie, great insight. Thank you.
I
Tom?
think there's another really important point here, which all of the panelists have demonstrated, is there is no one answer. There is no magic answer that fixes all of these challenges. And as Carrie pointed out, it's a living, breathing document, because as we institute these changes and we start to see them in practice and we start to understand those recommendations in terms of actual production and moving units through to retail, I think that's when we have to be open. This is not something that we publish one set of recommendations and we're done. This is
Right.
something that we're going to require feedback from every aspect of the industry, not just those of us who are on the committee, to make sure that we're keeping it evolving with the state of the business, with the state of materials, because we joked a little bit earlier this morning that every release is a limited edition because of the vinyl constraints that we face today. So we don't necessarily have the ability to replace a damaged unit. So let's put the focus and the effort into addressing this as broadly as possible and understand that there's not one solution. It's going to be work.
You're exactly right, Tom. And Justin, I think it's important that we point out, first of all, this isn't really an excuse, but part of the problem is also the labor pool. Many of us are dependent on actually using temporary help because there's a shortage of labor. And so there's a constant churn. And as a result, hopefully, these documents will be something that we can individually incorporate as references as you're dealing with kind of these quick turn employees, because we found in most cases, most companies did not have standards in writing. And that's what really led to this. But one thing that also surfaced was reusing boxes, whether it's a factory sealed carton from a plant, or just reusing a carton, like a bulk carton, for example. And again, you've had experiences there, as Stephen has, right? Where generally, I think our consensus is we're advising not to reuse cartons, that it just doesn't withstand the freight carriers and what it goes through.
Yeah, more often than not, we have definitely received shipments in boxes that have been reused from, both from One Stop and Direct. And those are with the highest majority to be damaged by the time they received us. They just aren't made to handle that second use. That being said, please do recycle them when you are done with them, and hopefully they end up somewhere positive. And I think I just want to add to the conversation as well that, from kind of a higher point of mind here, that music is personal, and it's very personal to all these people, on this call, both from what you're listening to and what you're dedicating your life and earning a paycheck doing. And it's personal to our customers. And so for it to arrive after everybody's hard work and effort and planning and marketing to come to us and that final mile be damaged, we end up disappointing our customer, who obviously know that they can go other places to purchase these things, but they want to support us as a small retailer. And so I think that's just good to keep in mind when you think about how these things make it to us.
Absolutely. We also identified the process of packing or stacking cartons on pallets were problematic. And this was also an area where best practices come into play. Warwick, can you kind of give us some insight on the challenges that you've had on the receiving end?
Absolutely. So on the palletizing, especially large quantities coming in for distribution, I want to say 98% of it comes in perfectly. But being able to pick boxes off those pallets, if they're 3 or 4 inner boxes within a pallet, it's heavy. When you've got your pickers touching these boxes, it's sometimes, for want of a different terms, it's backbreaking down stacking all of these boxes. So one, talking about the cardboard earlier, of course, we want to try and increase the strength there. But then just having it in a fashion where the product is squared up. We don't have edges which can get damaged in transit by forklifts, etc. And then just in a weight component so that they can be broken out individually with less impact to the people actually picking up the boxes.
Yep. You know, another area that we also identified, I think we have a little work to do on that, but that's also just stacking and storage of the cartons. So companies like Warwick's or mine, you know, we're buying inventory leads beyond just a month or two supply. So that means that we're storing cartons of inventory for future sales. And in some cases, there's no visible damage on the outside of the box, but there definitely is damage once you open that carton. And those cartons generally aren't open until you're replenishing. So we also have that issue of you anticipate inventory that you can sell, and then you discover from a shipment 3-4 months ago, potentially, that, you know, there's damages as well, just to share some insight. Now, we didn't mention the freight carriers, although I see it in the chat to some extent, but Billy, Warner graciously, as an outgrowth of our conversations in the task force, has volunteered to run a test through UPS. So can you share that process? I know it's
Yeah, sure.
just getting underway.
So not that we ever sell any records that we can't ship to customers because they're all hits and, you know, we have no stock anywhere. We never have overstock. But we found some. We found some overstock records, some actual records that we're going to put into boxes, and all the boxes that we have to use, the 10 count, the 20 count. And we're going to put those through a full scope of testing with UPS. Frankly, it feels like a ridiculous amount of money to do this test, but we're paying that. I'm not looking for anybody to say great, because I know that there's plenty of problems that we still have to solve, but we're going to get that done in the next couple of weeks with UPS to go through the whole process so that we can then go back and look at these cartons that are being used centrally and have an actual verifiable shipping and handling test that we can bring back to the center and start talking about solving the issue once and for all.
Yeah, and Carrie, I know Tom, half jokingly, half seriously, you know, identified, you know, new releases all limited edition. Record Store Day is exclusively limited edition officially, right? So the whole importance on delivering everything in pristine condition is critical for a successful session. We saw the numbers, right, from Luminate, which are just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Record Store Day is, you know, a special flower in this world, and can be like an example of things that happen on a regular basis. And you know, he's not wrong when he says that all records now are basically limited edition. You can't afford to have an indie exclusive piece of vinyl, or even, you know, a Target or a Walmart variant that is damaged upon receipt that then can't be sold to the customer. What's the point of creating those things? And, you know, we're keeping this very positive, and I feel like, you know, this is a tricky subject to keep positive, but we're doing a really good job. But speaking for stores, I see it all the time. I see it in their comment threads. I hear it when I talk to them. They're the front lines of the customers getting upset. And if we're all very excited, and I hope we all are very excited about how many people want vinyl in their lives and want to buy it from record stores, from other humans, we need to be very aware that the fastest way to lose those people's excitement is to not have the product, or have product that's damaged and isn't cool. You know, even if someone's coming and saying, I'm just buying these records because it's cool to do right now, if they get something that's all beat up, it's not that cool anymore. And that's the fastest way to kind of lose that market share that we're all very, very excited to have. So these are really big problems. And as everyone's pointed out, there's no one solution. It's different at every company. I see Red Eye and Secretly getting all kinds of big ups for their boxes. And I'm not 100% sure about Secretly, but I know Red Eye because they're here in North Carolina. That's all in one building, you know, and there's something to be said for that. Stuff comes to Red Eye and then it gets packed up to get shipped out. It doesn't go a bunch of other places necessarily. And you've also got people who can walk into the warehouse and say, hey, that's vinyl, don't pack it like that. That may be one of the reasons they're, you know, doing such a great job. That can't be a coincidence in my mind, but we've got to deal with the structure we've got. We're really trying to look at this from all angles. And I think these comments in the chat have been incredibly helpful. I mean, we're looking at angles that don't even include shipping, honestly. You know, we're looking at, you know, we probably shouldn't go into it too much, but I know we said it was okay to go into it, that at pressing plants, there are probably jackets sitting there. And if you get 3 damaged jackets, could we come up with a way for a store to say, I have 3 damaged jackets, send me the jackets. The record is fine, send me a jacket. You know, what if that was something that could happen on a larger scale? That's a ridiculously complicated thing to get into, but we thought about it and are maybe trying to see where that can go. So we are very much trying to figure out, coming at this from every angle.
Yeah, and that's a good call out. So let's ask the person to blame for coming up with this idea on kind of what our assessment is. It seems like a great idea, but it's wrought with a lot of challenges to manage it, right, Warwick?
Yes. I thought this was a brilliant idea, and I couldn't understand why nobody
It
had
still
thought of it
is.
before.
It still is.
So we did go down this avenue of these jackets, because really and truly, most of the time, the vinyl is in perfect condition, but you have a damaged corner or a bent corner. Customers don't want that. It ruins the customer experience, but yet the vinyl is still good. And really in the supply chain, the vinyl is where we're seeing the major issues. We're not able to press that vinyl fast enough. So looking at this is, how could we actually take these jackets or get extra jackets and be able to distribute those? So on paper, it looks like a great idea on the back of a napkin, but then trying to figure out the logistics of, how do you curate this? Who manages this? How do you ship it out? How many do you keep? At what point is the inventory dead? So it's becoming a little bit more complicated than I would like it to be. It really needs to become its own cottage industry. I'm trying to figure out if I can do it from my garage. But, you know, I definitely see that there is a value in some of these additional jackets. One of the areas that I looked at, and Steve and I had a couple of conversations, was, you know, what about the evergreen titles? But the problem with evergreen titles is any overruns are going to be used for future pressings as well. So there's definitely a financial aspect to it, and a little bit more than just the jackets itself. Tom brought up a great comment earlier, is, you know, what about the additional stickers? All of those go on the wrap on the outside. So even if we have the additional stickers, the customer may not be happy with the final product because it's missing its special edition sticker, or even title or detail stickers. So we definitely are looking at options, but it becomes, as we flesh it out a little bit more, it becomes a little bit more complicated than the initial idea of just throwing a few extra jackets with every shipment.
Yep. I stand behind my statement. It is a brilliant concept, but this is one that's still on the table that we're wrangling with. So please send us your thoughts or ideas. We know there's also costs associated with this, from the cost of producing the jackets to all the handling that goes into it. So that, you know, it's not like financially, it's smooth sailing, but it's something we will continue to look at. And I know this, first of all, such a intelligent, well-skilled group here. We're very fortunate to have them. I wanted to mention Red Eye is on the task force, by the way. So, you know, they're giving us their input through this whole exercise when we hear some of the accolades that they're getting. And again, please send us your thoughts and comments. We'll be producing these documents in May, and I think Nicole's going to share this with us. But again, I personally just want to thank the group before you, this task force, and also the others that weren't here on the panel. They've been great to work with, and everybody has the same goal. And it's really welcome to have that kind of spirit during, you know, challenged conditions. So thank you all for for that support and your input and for being here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you guys all for participating in this panel discussion on the task force. I sit in on those calls, and I am here to attest to all of you that the folks leading the charge here have great passion on the subject, you know, looking at every detail to make sure that they're giving the guidelines that are going to help the business. So I thank each and every single one of them for their input on this, and I'm excited to, you know, roll out some of those guidelines in May. So let me talk to you a little bit, just briefly here between panels on what's going to be happening at Music Biz 2022. It's our first in-person conference in 2 years. We've done a lot of virtual things, including our Let's Talk Physical couch camp with Record Store Day. We're going to be including all of these virtual elements into the new face-to-face event. So, you know, there's going to be something, as I said, for everybody, especially the physical side of the business. And I got input from the physical side of the business, from our coalitions, from the PBAC, from Record Store Day, and what this programming should be. So there's 4 main elements that I just want to hit here with you today. There will be a Record Store Day town hall led and organized by Record Store Day. It's a time for all that are involved in Record Store Day to come together to talk about the event in April while it's still fresh in your minds here at the beginning of May. What worked, what didn't, what can be done better or different for the November and then again in 2023. So that will take place during Music Biz. Jocelyn Pryor, who's VP of Marketing at AMP Distribution, she's going to present a panel called Vinyl Projections and Lead Times, Oh My. The panel will shed light on both missed opportunities from missed projections in vinyl manufacturing, and will also establish some best practices for projections, creations of IOs, and getting it right from the beginning. Jocelyn's going to be joined by an all-star female panel, Erin Choi from Hopeless, Nina Collins from Warner Music Group, and Candace Watkins from Big Loud. Also rolling out at Music Biz 2022, Music Biz and the RIAA have joined teams with Music Watch, which is led by Russ Krupnick. And we're currently fielding a study on the vinyl product purchaser. Results from the study are going to be released during the conference, and Russ is going to present those findings and give us a better insight into the profile of the buyers who are, you know, pushing this vinyl momentum forward. So that's going to be very exciting. I've seen some preliminary results, and I think you guys are really going to get something out of this research that you can take back to your companies and share and discuss. And Let's Talk Physical. That's the 4th pillar I just wanted to hit today. You know, as the task force and Steve alluded to, vinyl best practices guidelines will come out and will be discussed during Let's Talk Physical for the industry to see. We're also going to have a panel from Women in Vinyl, and they're going to be talking about the job opportunities in vinyl and how do we educate the next generation of artists and label managers, cutting engineers, and others to understand the vinyl medium and to take the reins and keep the format on this upward trajectory. Those are the 2 things we have set for Let's Talk Physical now. Steve and I are going to jump on the phone and finish the program next week. But if you guys have any suggestions on programming to be part of the Let's Talk Physical event in May, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Steve. We'd be happy to hear your suggestions. And I just want to close with all this programming that I just talked about is happening face-to-face in May at Music Biz, but we know that there are still folks who aren't going to meet COVID protocols or are not yet permitted to travel through their companies. So we do have a live streamed version of Music Biz 22. We're live streaming a limited number of programs, and all this physical programming that I just talked about will be part of that live stream. So if you can't be there with us in person, we'd love to have you virtually so you can hear what's happening in real time and react to it as well. It will be on our Socio platform, so there'll be a chat feature, you know, so you can interact with the conversation. So look for that virtual ticket at musicbiz2022.com. And as you're planning to be at Music Biz, either in person or virtual, feel free to reach out. Happy to answer any questions you may have as you're planning your trip. So thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it over now to Steve for our next panel.
Thanks, Nicole. Really excited to meet with everybody in person. Great programming, and thanks to the organization for making sure that we've got great representation with that awesome programming for physical music products. So I encourage everyone to attend. This is our one voice, our one forum, and it's a pretty amazing feat that this organization survived and found very creative ways for us to communicate during the pandemic when we couldn't do it in person. So with that in mind, let's shift to our good friends at the pressing plants. They will provide insight to the challenges they face to keep up with demand and the prognosis for 2022 and 2023. And what's great is that we've opened up communication. Many of us on this forum, we don't interact from a business perspective with the plants, but at the end of the day, they control our collective livelihoods from the physical business standpoint. And so, as Carrie also eloquently touched on, this is like a passion, a work of passion and craft. And we're very fortunate to have three to share with us today their insights. So with that, please welcome Mike Jakari, who's the co-founder of 2424 Vinyl, Sean Johnson, president of Precision Record Pressing, and Tone Vermeulen, who is the owner of Record Industry based in Europe.
Hi, Steve.
Hello, gentlemen. First, some good news to open up. Hello. So some good news to open up. First of all, Mike, you fall in this category. New plants are coming. It's good news. So tell us about your decision to open up a new plant and timing of the opening and the services that you'll provide.
Sure. Thanks, Steve, for having me. I will say I'm now scared out of my freaking mind after that. I mean, I'm writing.
You're afraid. Yep.
Box the F out of the product. Killer tape. Fragile. I mean, it's so funny just listening to that. Just scared me senseless. But no, it was good information. I've really learned a lot actually from that last panel. But to give you a quick background on my story, I spent a lot of time at Universal Music Group. Came up through their whole world and everything. Head of marketing until 2015, 2016. Started my own production company and did a lot of TV and film, some music docs, some other stuff, but always had a toe in the pool there for music. And again, I grew up on vinyl, DJ'd all the big clubs in Detroit back in the day. So I've always loved vinyl, always had a passion for vinyl. And then when the pandemic hit, oddly, a friend of mine said that he had a friend that was thinking about getting into pressing vinyl. And so, at the time I was doing these productions that were all getting shut down. And I thought, well, I'll talk to the guy since he said that I know a lot about music. I figured, yeah, I'll talk to the guy. And actually we hit it off. He's a big vinyl guy, vinyl fan. And so during the pandemic, we actually started looking at different parts of the country to potentially open up a plant. And then when it came right down to it, we looked at Detroit and my hometown. And we wound up buying a 40,000 square foot warehouse. And during the pandemic, we've been cleaning it out completely and refurbishing the whole place. And yeah, we're going to actually have our first press in April. We're going to slowly ramp up. Presses 2, 3, and 4 will go online during the summer. And then we hope to have 6 by January of 2023 and 12 by January 2024. And then we're going to see where it all lays out after that and where we're going from there. But we're really excited about it. I mean, again, to be able to, obviously like Ton and some of these other guys are like, dude, just wait until you're in it. Sean's probably like, just wait until you're really in it. It's fun now. It's fun in the beginning. It's very exciting. But no, I'm just really excited about it. And I'll tell you this also, Steve, what's been great are just the connections and reconnecting with a lot of people from the industry again. I mean, just on your panel, Billy, Tom D, Carrie, yourself have been very generous with your time, your knowledge, some of the connections. And then I know just people that are tuning in and such. I mean, it's going to be great to reconnect with a lot of these people. So we're very excited. I mean, very excited to connect and reconnect.
Well, welcome. We're so glad that you're coming on board to help us contend with the supply demand issues. And I know also adding to your horror was when you found out there was no such company as pressingplantparts.com, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. So listen, this gentleman relived the classic movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and really grateful he was able to make it. Sean Johnson. I was wondering if you could just give, for those not in the know, a little bit of background on precision record pressing.
Sure. Thanks a lot for inviting me to be here today. Precision's part of the GZ Media Group, the largest manufacturer of vinyl in the world. We entered the US market in 2016 with the establishment of Precision. Memphis Record Pressing is now part of the group, so we have 2 pressing plants, and we're opening a 3rd plant in Nashville next month.
That's great. And Tone, thanks so much for staying awake. I know it's a little bit later there, and for representing Europe. Could you give us a little bit of background on record industry?
What everybody's facing is, of course, the huge demand, which is you can't get through it. Last year, the smaller companies were still okay, smaller labels. This year, they're not, because they found out when they place orders earlier, they get their records earlier. So everybody's doing that. And now everybody's getting their records next year at the earliest, when they place orders today. We try to ramp up as well, trying to put more capacity in, but it's not going quick enough. I think the world is in need of maybe 400 or 500 new presses, running as on average as many hours as we do now with all the pressing plants together, which is impossible. The companies who are building presses can't keep up. Even if they want to, the whole industry worldwide is running after parts which are late, or you can't get even lead time. So the whole supply chain is upside down, which makes it even harder. So companies who order presses or make presses are later than they expected before. So for now, we just have to sit and wait, and we have to see what's going to happen after COVID is easing out a bit, because I'm 100% sure that people will spend money on different things again. I'm sure too that we have a much wider fan base. A lot of youngsters now are after vinyl, but it can't be that demand will stay the same if people are able to spend money on going on holidays, going to live performances, festivals, etc. So it's just waiting for that, and hopefully it eases out a bit, because the current lead times are not healthy for our industry. It takes too much time. Bands even considering not even to order vinyl because they can't plan. They try to sell their vinyl on live gigs, make some extra money, but the live gigs is already planned in half a year, and the records will come after that. So yeah, it's tough. It's business-wise, it's perfect, that you have a full order book until the end of the year. But for the product as such, I hope things change soon.
Yeah, we're seeing, we're obviously seeing labels and artist management making decisions to delay releases just to accommodate that backlog that you referred to. But that said, Sean, I know it's not all gloom and doom. Not that that's what Tone's purveying. As he said, he's booked solid. It's a great business model, but we're challenged with meeting the demand. You're bullish on your future in terms of some of the plans to expand.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that Tone says. The environment is very challenging, because even if the industry wasn't growing, you've got a lot of challenges, and when the industry is trying to grow, which it is, it becomes an exponentially harder problem. I think there's good news for customers, almost for sure, that by sometime the second half of next year, I think if the market doesn't grow by more than maybe 10% between now and then, beyond the massive growth we had last year, that I think that people will find that the market is well supplied. The existing plants and new plants like Mike's are coming in and adding capacity at a faster rate than the market is growing, a lot faster.
Yeah. Yep. And
Now,
Tom-
obviously,
yeah, go ahead.
being double the size as an industry means then double the amount of PVC and plating and everything else that's necessary. So this brings a lot of challenges to all the participants on the manufacturing side.
Yeah, and hopefully a wake up call to some of the you know the major companies who are experiencing great business. Obviously, streaming has been terrific, acquiring assets like publishing. But Jack White had an interesting piece that people should check on, and it said now's the time to call to action to try to ramp up as best we can. You have to have parts and materials, as Tone said, but his numbers, I recall, I mean, we're looking at more than doubling the existing amount of lines is what he's suggesting for us to catch up. So that's a lot of work and probably a need for even some additional players in the space to even meet that if we can. But from a labor pool standpoint, Tone, how are things from your perspective? Historically, it's been a challenge. Are you finding that's eased up a bit?
We were able to get some nice, good staffing. We are lucky that we are based in a quite crowded area. I know some of the other big plants in Europe aren't, and that's tougher for them to get people from around the area they are. But still, to grow, you can't just hire 10 new operators in one go, because you need to teach them the skills. So you have to take them in once at a time, one at a time, and then you need a month or 2 or 3 to teach them. So we're trying to create some overcapacity now to be sure that we're in the right place when we are getting some more presses online.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle Schock, by the way, for posting that link. Sean, how about from your end of it? Are you in a good place from a labor pool standpoint?
Well, I think our industry and a lot of manufacturing industries have had to adjust their compensation, really, at the end of the day. I mean, there does seem to be, even at higher compensation level, challenges to fully staff an operation where you're trying to grow 30, 40, 50% a year. But I think it's manageable.
Yep. And Mike, from your perspective, now you're starting from, right, you got 2 guys, that are working, the 2 owners. How do you go about, building a pool of reliable resources? Oh, you're on mute, Mike.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
There you go.
What's nice is that we've had I don't know about luxury, but we've had the privilege of shadowing Third Man. Ben Blackwell's been great, and then Brock and Anthea and Eddie and all the guys, all the people over at Third Man have been great, and we have literally been shadowing them off and on for the last couple of months, and there's been some really good connections there. And we have some people in mind to bring in, and we're going to ramp up again in June. We're going to start pressing. We're going to go slow, but we already have people in mind, some people, and then we'll be looking for people, obviously, press operators and things like that. We'd love to be able to get up to 30, 40 people before, early January 2023 and stuff, and then go from there. I mean, we'd rather have more people and do 2 shifts, kind of thing, than kind of understaffed. We're definitely going to ramp up, not quickly, but, on a good time frame. We're not going to sit back and slowly boutique this. We want to build, pretty quickly. So
Sean, I put you on the spot, but I think one area that's been a real challenge, and I can't say specifically precision, but that's the information flow from inventory management on the label side to distribution to retailers and wholesalers as to the timing of repressing product. And, in trying to plan around that, which has just been for all of us a nightmare, and we know the reasons why. How do you manage that communication? It's got to be a challenge.
Well, it's definitely a challenge. Over the course of the past 2 years, we've moved from the old planning model, which was 3 or 4 months to plan a new release, maybe a little bit longer, obviously, for some of the upfront things happening on the label side, to a model where we have finite capacity that's being allocated to customers, medium and larger size, and then into buckets to be available for smaller indie customers. And if you have your capacity and you need to run more vinyl than that capacity gives you over the next 3 months, you start planning further out. So now we have, the customers that do longer planning are planning out 9, 10, 12, 14 months. And you start to run into a conflict between new release and catalog replenishment.
Right.
So everything becomes complicated. The timelines for supply of color PVC for print are in fluctuation. So it's the model has been very disrupted over the last 2 years. But like I've said before, I think we'll get back to a much better place 12, 15 months or so from now, where it's a lot easier to plan out, to know the capacity, know the timelines. I'm 100% sure the supply chain things will come back into balance. It's just going to be a very painful 12 to 15 month period. So it's very communication intensive now, and it's much more difficult than it was in the past to provide really good information that's valid today and is valid a week from now.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for that insight. And, just a call out to the labels. I know that, it's your challenge in that you're making a decision along, I guess, with artist management, whoever signs off on it now, in some cases, 8 to 12 months before a release. And, how do you do that? And, so when you fall short, that's obviously what we'll hear. And one thing it feels to me like we can improve on collectively is I've encouraged labels to work with their distributors and do more outreach with major accounts to try to help provide the forecast. I don't hear from hardly any labels in terms of forecasting. And we would be happy, even if there has to be some types of commitments, we'd love to partner with you. I don't want to volunteer Warwick, maybe he does get some of that communication, but I think we can help improve that. For sure, we don't have a crystal ball, but there might be some insights that we can provide. So Tona, turn it over to you. Same question, in terms of the communication on the timing and deliverables of product. I think you mentioned in some cases, you're just not giving any indications now until it gets a little bit closer to when the product's ready, right? Because it's a moving target.
Now, maybe I wasn't completely clear. The raw materials we need for our to make records and print sleeves, we're fine. We need to order a bit more upfront, but it's more to build new machines to keep them running. So controllers, PLCs, all kinds of technical stuff. That's really hard to get lead times on. We ordered stuff in August last year, and we still didn't receive them. And if you ask them, when do you expect them, they say, we don't know anymore because we don't get any information from the manufacturers. So from the raw materials, it's still fine. Although, of course, PVC is getting more difficult. Nickel is a major disaster. Probably people followed it on the news that prices went sky high. Because everybody who's in the automobile industry seems to need nickel now to make the batteries. So prices will go up, are going up now, and will go up, will stay going up. So I think galvanic prices will need to be raised soon. Normally it's just a bump because people are on strike in the mines, but now there's a different aspect behind this. So yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you touched on that on our preliminary call too. I mean, we said this is kind of like the currency exchange where it's a moving target in terms of costs associated with. And of course, the labels also have to foot that bill as well. So it's like, how do you manage it? And it's and that impacts the landed cost to retailers, wholesalers, and ultimately the consumers. I don't see how that doesn't happen. We have seen some increases already. So that has to be a challenge in managing the business. Sean, from your perspective, you find that to be a moving target and a bit of a challenge?
Yes. no doubt about it. There's a surprise a week right now, basically.
Yeah. Yep. So Mike, how do you plan for that? Your P&L probably a year ago, is probably the 10th iteration after hearing all this, right?
Yeah, we've changed it quite a bit. And it's funny though, early on, I mean, we're going to stick to black and some color variants and things of that nature. We're not going to get into splatter and get super creative, crazy early on. We just want to learn the process and learn, the trade and everything. But, the nice thing is, I mean, we're excited. We haven't even started taking orders yet. And, again, we're going to slowly ramp up and build that up and everything. But you're right. I get shocked every month from a new price list or something, whether it's from, Ross Ellis or from, somebody else or whatever, Casey or with the PVCs and stuff like that. It's like, oh, wait, where are we at here? So it like Tom said, it's kind of a moving target right now, but it still feels though very reasonable. I mean, it's still, I mean, to me, but again, brand new versus these guys who have been doing this for quite some time.
Yeah. Keep in mind, we're not trying to scare you,
Yeah,
out of this business.
How do I get out of
no
this?
escape now?
Leave meeting. Okay.
No. So colored vinyls come up on the chat line. So it's a mixed bag, right? I mean, we know that with a lot of the marketing plans and the objectives of artists and labels, that you have to try to satisfy key markets like the indie market, key customers. And so you see different iterations, right, for the same release. That's drives more business, but also ties up the lines. There's also some complications, not just in the cost, but doesn't it take a little bit longer to produce colored vinyl as well, Sean?
Well, obviously, when you've got more variants and more different colors, it brings challenges for planning, and every job has a certain amount of setup time. So if you set up a job and you're running 10, 15, 20,000 records instead of 100, 150, 200, when you run more variants, you will end up having a reduction of some amount in capacity. We continue to be committed to a multi-variant world because we think it's an important part of the appeal of vinyl to the customer base. So we just have to soldier on and get through it, essentially. I know lots of customers talk about on their side unilaterally deciding to reduce the number of variants, and it's not a bad idea in the short term for sure. We're just trying to resist the temptation to tell people that they need to do that. We love color. I mean, color's now 60% of what we're running, 55, 60%, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and conceptually, I think a number of people say, yeah, maybe it's a good idea, but nobody wants to be the sacrificial lamb to volunteer their artists, right? And so it is a mixed bag, and I think, yeah, it's definitely food for thought as far as at least the interim and trying to get through this, and not to mention again that there are thousands of magnificent recordings we can't deliver as an industry, right, in the form of catalog as a result of the backlog, and also a significant increase in the amount of releases. At least to me, it appears like we're saying just an onslaught of releases. The pandemic has been, very good to us from a creative standpoint as artists have written and recorded multiple recordings. So Taylor Swift, right, 2 or 3 releases in 1 year, and she dominated the charts. So, Tone, what's your perspective on the colored vinyl side of it?
Is what Sean already said. It is part of the product we make. And of course, it takes a bit more time, but if your setup is right, then it's fine to deal with. I'm still surprised though, that some customers, when we get a big order, let's say 20 or 30,000, they say, okay, let's make it red. Okay, we're going to order red for you. And we need at least 10 to 12 weeks to get it in. And then suddenly, 3 weeks before, they go, oh, can we go for blue? Because the artist changed his mind. So I still believe that there are people in the business who think we just push a button on the press, which says now it's red and now it's blue. They don't have any idea, apparently. So this is what we're still dealing with. Colors are a bit more difficult. It's getting better now because the main reason why things on colors were a bit later because of the pigment, which had to come from the Far East. It seems to be a bit better under control. So for now, I don't see any problems with pressing color vinyl.
That's good. Sean, do you find it a challenge to kind of in mid-production where there's shifts or additions in terms of adding variants or altering the new release plan?
Well, I think it's more an issue of if we give someone a window of time within which they have to make the color choice for a new release, of people struggling to actually finalize their color selection for the 2, 3, or 4 variants. So if we're saying 13 weeks out, they need to choose color, people struggle to get it done by that time. And maybe it's 12 weeks, 11 and a half weeks. And so then we're scrambling to trying to get the manufacturing sped up enough for the material to come in. And you've got logistics challenges because our compound comes from Europe, we make it ourselves. But because it's coming from Europe, we have the challenge of the unpredictable container transit times. They used to be very predictable at 4 weeks. Now they're 5 to 8.
Not to mention increased costs, escalating costs on a regular basis, right, for those containers?
Yeah, container costs went up 300%. Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, when it went up 100%, it seemed crazy. Then it went up another 50% on top of that, and then it went up again. So it will abate. It's just hard to predict when.
Right.
I mean, I'm convinced it will abate. It's very difficult to figure out when we get back to $4,500 a container, and we're at $13,000 to $16,000 right now.
Yeah, not unlike, us looking forward to seeing our 401ks kind of go back up. But with that in mind, gentlemen, you have a somewhat thankless job, but we all appreciate what you do. Our livelihoods are in your hands. And we really appreciate you, sharing your insights, and also for increasing the communication with a number of us that may not be direct accounts, but we're all in this together. And we'll keep that conversation going. Tone, any last thoughts from you other than don't jump?
No, keep up the good spirit because we need as much vinyl as possible.
Amen to that. And Sean?
Well, I think I would say that I think Jack White his message is missing what actually is going on in the industry. I mean, everybody would be happy if all the plans were executed faster, but there's a tremendous amount of activity going on with bringing new capacity in. So, like I said, 12 to 15 months of brain damage, and then we'll be in a better place.
There you go. Thank you, Dr. Sean. And Mike, thank you for signing up for this and not backing out.
Yeah, you guys have not deterred me one bit.
Excellent.
I'm excited.
Welcome to the team. Welcome back to the industry, gentlemen. Again, thanks so much for your time, and most importantly, for delivering us our precious commodity vinyl. We thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
See you.
and with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for everybody who participated in the program today. Lots of great information tossed around, lots of little nuggets, and I'm sure you guys are going to take back to your company. So thank you for everybody who attended. Again, if you have any questions about the next Let's Talk Physical or all the programming at Music Biz 2022, reach out. It's nicole.hennessy@musicbiz.org. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.